Hey, my name's Jacob,
I'm Shauna.
and we're coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Today we're going to talk to you about first aid.
First aid is what happens right after an accident before professional help arrives.
Right after an accident, you want to check, call, care.
You want to check to see how the victim is and what their condition is.
You want to call for help or 911.
And you want to care for them to the best of your ability.
Now we're going to talk about hurry cases. Hurry cases are situations in which you need to get emergency help immediately. But here are some steps you can take to help your victim while we're waiting for emergency services.
One of these hurry cases would be when someone's heart stopped or something called cardiac arrest. Now, they might look like they're sleeping, so you want to shout their name and ask if they're okay, and even tap on their shoulders a little bit to see if they wake up. If they don't, then you want to definitely check for a pulse. You can check for a pulse using 2 fingers, and their pulse should be located around their neck. If you don't feel a pulse, then I recommend starting chest compressions until help arrives. So you want to interlock your fingers, one on top of the other, one hand on top of the other, and push down with the heel of your palm on the center of the chest. I do recommend that you get some formal CPR training so you can be prepared to help others if the time arises.
Now we're going to talk about serious bleeding. Serious bleeding is typically when it is squirting like a fountain as opposed to oozing.
So in order to stop serious bleeding, you want to make sure you first protect yourself by having your gloves on. And you want to go for anything like gauze, or if that's not available, you could even use a neckerchief or a t-shirt and apply it to the bleeding and apply pressure to stop it immediately. You could take something such as a triangle bandage, which looks a lot like a neckerchief opened up, and tie it off in order to get that bleeding, in order to secure that gauze and get that bleeding to stop.
Another hurry case is stopped breathing. Stopped breathing is when the individual has something blocking their airways or their lungs aren't working for whatever reason. You can check this by tilting the head back, listening. If you hear nothing or feel nothing on your cheek, make sure you check the inside of their mouth to see if there is anything in the way. If there is, make sure to remove it, and you can begin rescue breaths. We highly recommend having a barrier on you at all times to protect yourselves. Again, we recommend having professional CPR training to keep you prepared.
The next hurry case we're going to talk about is stroke. Stroke is very time sensitive, so you want to make sure you call 911 as soon as you recognize the symptoms. A good way to test for stroke is to use the FAST stroke test developed right here in Cincinnati. FAST stands for face, so you want to look for any facial drooping. A stands for arms, look for any arm weakness or numbness that the patient may have. S stands for speech, so you want to look for any slurred speech that the patient may have. And if you see any of those symptoms, then it's time to jump to T, which stands for time. It's time to call 911.
Another hurry case is poisoning. Poisoning occurs when you ingest or inhale anything that you should not, including chemicals. When this happens, it's time to call 911 immediately and your local poison control.
So now we're going to talk about some basic injuries that you should be prepared for. So the first one is cuts and scratches. For cuts and scratches, you just want to use some soap and water to make sure it's nice and clean. And if the person doesn't have any allergies, use a little bit of antibiotic ointment to help keep it from getting infected, and just use a Band-Aid to cover it.
Another minor injury that you will come across can go from minor to severe really quickly, and that is burns. Burns come in 3 degrees. First degree burns are typically just red skin. This is most common with sunburn. When you see sunburn or any other first degree burn, you want to remove them from the sun or heat source immediately, run it under cool water, and add aloe or burn cream to help with the pain. Second degree burns are typically with blisters. When you see this, you want to leave the blisters alone, run the skin under cool water, and apply a loose gauze to protect the skin. Third degree burns are our most severe. Third degree burns are usually charred skin, meaning it looks black. They typically feel no pain. When this happens, call 911 immediately, leave the burn alone, do not remove any clothing or skin, and treat for shock.
The next scenario we're going to talk about is a nosebleed. A nosebleed is pretty common and can look really serious, but can easily be controlled, typically within a few minutes. If someone has a nosebleed, have them sit up and tilt their head forward and pinch their nose. Above that point where they pinch their nose, you're going to want to apply a cool cloth and hold that have them pinch their nose for about 10 minutes. If the nosebleed lasts more than 15 minutes, go ahead and get some help.
Blisters are another very common injury you might find, especially if you're hiking or at camp. Blisters are caused by your shoes rubbing up against you if they don't fit properly. That's a great way to make sure you avoid them is by having good fitting shoes and socks and keeping your socks dry. If you do have a blister, do not pop the blister. Keep it wrapped in some moleskin cut in a donut shape. You put the donut hole over top of the blister and it pads the skin around it.
Next scenario we're going to talk about is choking. Choking can be really serious, but it's something that you can act on immediately and help to make a difference. Choking is when there's something blocking someone's airway and they can't breathe. If they're able to talk or cough, then their airway isn't completely blocked and they're not necessarily choking, so you should just encourage them to keep coughing and hopefully cough the object up. Otherwise, they might be displaying the universal choking sign, and you want to make sure you ask them if they can talk or if they need help. If they nod yes that they need help, then you want to go ahead and do something called the Heimlich maneuver. For the Heimlich maneuver, you want to get behind the person and you want to ball up one fist and put it about where their belly button is and place your other hand over that, and you would push in and move up. And do that until the object comes up. Better.
Thanks for joining us today for First Aid.
Make sure to grab a buddy and practice these skills and even make a first aid kit and talk to a healthcare professional.
Hey Webelos Scouts, my name's Alvin, this is my buddy Carl, and we're here to work on First Responder Adventure. Now we're working on requirement number 4, which talks about how to treat for shock. Now before we talk about how to treat for shock, let's talk for a moment about what shock is. It's not like you're surprised or scared or something. This is a medical term, and it talks about you're losing blood or blood volume, and you don't have oxygen getting to all parts of the body. Now this could be because somebody's bleeding real bad inside or externally on the outside. Now, first thing you want to do is, if you see them bleeding, of course, is to treat to stop the bleeding. But for somebody that's had a bad accident, more than likely they're going to go into shock. And the way you can tell that is the face is going to be pale, it's not getting enough blood and oxygen, their skin is going to be cold and clammy, and they might even be shivering. Okay? Now, if this person, we don't suspect them to have a back injury or injuries to the legs, to help them, we want to put something underneath the feet. We want to raise the feet up a little bit, and what that does, that helps the blood to run back down to the brain and vital parts of the body, so it's getting plenty of blood and oxygen. Okay? Now, if it's hot outside, we may not want to cover them up. But if they're cold, we want to take a sheet, a blanket, a coat or something to get them covered up to help them warm up. Now, if this person is conscious, even though they might be thirsty or something, we don't want to give them anything to drink or to eat. Now, if we're suspecting that they've got a back injury or injury to the legs, we don't raise their feet up. Now, if this person's been in a bad accident and they're not conscious, instead of putting them in this position, we want to get them up on their side. So we're just going to roll Carl over on his side. Now the reason we do this, in case that they vomit, it will come out and not go back down into their stomachs or lungs. Okay? Well, Webelos Scouts, we thank you for paying attention. We hope that you practice this a lot, because your First Responder Award is something that you should practice even after you earn everything, so you can remember everything and how to treat somebody for shock and the other situations that you've gone over before. So, Webelos, it's great to have you with you, and it's great to be alive in scouting.